There's a moment in life when everything seems uncertain. You've prayed, you've waited, and yet the answers aren't clear. You're standing at a crossroads, wondering if you're on the right path, questioning if God is really guiding you or if you've somehow missed his direction. Doubt creeps in, fear whispers, and the weight of decisions feels overwhelming. But what if I told you that God has already given you a sign? What if the answer isn't in the noise of the world, but in the stillness within you? We often expect God's guidance to come in loud, undeniable ways, thunderous revelations, supernatural visions, unmistakable miracles. But more often than not, his direction comes in the form of something much quieter: peace. A peace that doesn't make sense, a calm in the midst of chaos, an unshakable stillness that tells you this is right. That peace isn't a coincidence, it's a sign. It's God's way of confirming that you are exactly where you need to be, even when the path ahead isn't fully clear. So today, if you find yourself wrestling with uncertainty, if you're questioning whether you're walking in God's will, ask yourself this: do you feel peace? Not the absence of struggle, not a life free from challenges, but a deep, unwavering assurance that despite everything, you are being held, guided, and led. Because when God is directing your steps, peace follows. The question is, will you trust it? Inner peace is one of the most profound indicators that God is leading you on the right path. It's not about having a life without problems, nor is it the absence of struggle. Instead, it's a deep-rooted sense of calm, even when things don't seem to be going the way you expected. This peace isn't external, it's internal. It's the feeling that despite uncertainty, despite the unknown, you are exactly where you need to be. Many people mistake peace for comfort, but the two are not the same. Comfort is situational, depends on what's happening around you. Peace, however, is spiritual. It comes from knowing that your steps are being guided, even if you don't have all the answers. When God is leading you, you may still face challenges, but there is an unshakable assurance that you are walking in the right direction. This peace doesn't mean the absence of fear, but rather the presence of trust. It allows you to make decisions with confidence, not because you know the outcome, but because you trust the process. One of the most telling signs of divine peace is when you no longer feel the need to force things into place. So often people chase after things that aren't meant for them, pushing, pulling, and exhausting themselves to make something work. But when you are on the right path, things start aligning in ways you can't explain. It doesn't mean life is easy, but it means you aren't constantly fighting resistance. There's a flow, a rhythm, a sense that what's unfolding is happening for you, not against you. This peace also shows up in how you handle setbacks. When you're walking the wrong path, obstacles feel like punishments, like signs that you should turn back. But when you're on the right path, obstacles feel like lessons. You don't panic when things don't go as planned because you trust that there's a reason for the delay, a purpose behind the detour. There's no longer a need to rush or to compare your journey to others. You start realizing that what is meant for you will never miss you, and what isn't meant for you will never stay, no matter how much you try to hold on to it. This kind of peace also influences your relationships. You stop chasing people who don't value you, and you stop trying to prove your worth. You become more selective with your energy because you know that your time and spirit are sacred. God begins removing distractions, toxic influences, and unnecessary noise from your life, allowing you to focus on what truly matters. The peace you feel isn't just about circumstances, it's about clarity. You begin to see yourself, your purpose, and your path more clearly. Most importantly, inner peace is the absence of constant doubt. You no longer wake up questioning if you are doing the right thing or making the right choices. Even when things are uncertain, there's an unshakable knowing within you that you are exactly where you need to be. Opportunities often come when we least expect them, and sometimes they arrive so effortlessly that we question if they're too good to be true. But when God is leading you, doors don't open through force, manipulation, or sheer willpower. They open naturally. There is a flow, an ease, a rhythm to the way things align. And while the journey itself might require effort, the opportunities themselves are not something you have to chase endlessly. Think about the moments in life when things just fell into place. You didn't have to push beyond your limits, beg, or compromise your values to make something happen. Instead, it came together as if it was meant to be. That's not luck, nor is it random coincidence. It is divine alignment. When God is guiding you, He orchestrates situations in a way that you could never plan on your own. This doesn't mean life will be free of challenges or that everything you want will happen exactly how and when you want it. But when you're walking in the direction you're meant to, you'll notice how the right people, opportunities, and resources seem to show up at the perfect time. It might be a job you didn't expect to land, a conversation that leads to an important breakthrough, or an invitation that changes the course of your journey. There's also a distinction between an opportunity that is truly from God and one that simply looks good on the surface. Not every open door is meant for you. Sometimes we force ourselves into situations that aren't aligned with our calling, convincing ourselves that struggle means we're supposed to stay. But when God opens a door, there is confirmation, not necessarily in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of peace. You may have experienced times when you tried to force something, a relationship, a career move, a business venture, only to be met with constant resistance. No matter how much effort you put in, things just didn't work. You exhausted yourself trying to control the outcome, but it only led to frustration and burnout. That's a sign that you're pushing in a direction that isn't meant for you. When something is divinely aligned, it may not always be easy, but it won't feel like an uphill battle against something that refuses to move. You'll notice doors opening without you having to break them down. The right people will come into your life without you having to beg for their presence. The right job, the right connection, the right moment, it will appear, not because you forced it, but because it was already written for you. This doesn't mean you won't have to work for your dreams or put in effort, but it does mean that when you're aligned, your energy is used more efficiently. You're no longer wasting time chasing things that were never meant for you. Instead, you're walking in purpose, trusting that the doors that open naturally are the ones you're meant to walk through. You notice certain messages repeating in your life. Phrases, scriptures, or lessons that seem to echo in unexpected places. It happens when you least expect it. You open a book and a particular sentence jumps out at you. Later that day, a friend mentions the same idea in conversation. Then you hear it again in a podcast, a song, or a passing comment from a stranger. At first, it seems like coincidence, but over time, it becomes impossible to ignore. These repeated messages are not random. They are signs. They are reminders, confirmations, and sometimes gentle nudges from God, guiding you towards something you need to see, understand, or act upon. When God is leading you, He often speaks in patterns. He knows that human nature tends to overlook the first hint, maybe even the second. But when the same theme keeps showing up, it's because there is something deeply important for you to grasp. Maybe you've been struggling with a decision, unsure whether to take a leap of faith, change directions, or let go of something that no longer serves you. In response, you begin encountering messages that align with what your heart already knows, but your mind resists. The same words, the same stories, the same emotions rise to the surface, pushing you toward clarity. These divine reminders don't always come in grand, obvious ways. Sometimes they are subtle, almost whisper-like. You could be scrolling through your phone and come across a quote that perfectly addresses what's been on your mind. A sermon you randomly listen to speaks directly to your current struggle. A mentor shares advice that feels like it was meant just for you. These are not accidents. They are markers on your journey, guiding you with intention. But recognizing these messages requires awareness. It's easy to dismiss them as just thoughts passing through, but when the same theme keeps surfacing, it's worth paying attention. Are you hearing repeated encouragement to step into something new? Are you receiving constant reminders to trust, let go, or move forward? Are you being challenged to face something you've been avoiding? There is wisdom in what keeps returning to you. The things that repeat are often the very things we need to acknowledge the most. These signs also serve as reassurance. Sometimes when you're on the right path, doubt creeps in. You question whether you're making the right choices, whether you're capable, whether it will all work out. That's when God sends reminders, not necessarily to show you what's next, but to affirm that you're moving in the right direction. Even if the road ahead isn't fully visible, these repeated messages act as signposts, letting you know that you're not alone, that He is still guiding, still speaking, still leading. Every person experiences this differently. Some find it in scripture, others in the words of loved ones, and some in moments of deep reflection. But one thing remains constant. When God is speaking, He speaks with purpose. The question is, are you listening? Life has a way of testing us, especially when we decide to walk a path that feels right but is filled with unexpected challenges. There's a misconception that being on the right path means everything will fall into place effortlessly. That struggle is a sign you've made the wrong choice. But in reality, growth doesn't come without resistance. Challenges are not roadblocks. They are shaping tools. They refine, stretch, and prepare you for the purpose you're meant to fulfill. Think about a moment in your life when things got tough. Maybe you lost a job, faced rejection, dealt with failure, or experienced deep uncertainty. At that moment, it might have felt like everything was falling apart. But looking back, those moments were necessary. They taught you resilience, forced you to dig deep, and made you stronger in ways you wouldn't have been otherwise. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in discomfort, in struggle, in situations where you have no choice but to push forward. When you are on the right path, the challenges you face are not there to break you. They are there to build you. You start noticing that every difficulty teaches you something valuable. The patience you never thought you had, the endurance you didn't know existed, the courage you doubted, these are all revealed through struggle. You don't just become stronger, you become wiser, more self-aware, and more in tune with what truly matters. It's easy to question everything when obstacles arise. Doubt creeps in, and you start wondering if you made the wrong decision. But the truth is, if every great thing in life were easy, it wouldn't be worth much. Success, fulfillment, and purpose are all earned through persistence. Every leader, every visionary, every person who has ever created meaningful change has walked through fire. They have failed, stumbled, been tested, and yet they kept going. One of the most powerful realizations is understanding that when God is leading you, He isn't just giving you what you want. He is preparing you for what you are meant to have. Sometimes the challenge is there because you're not quite ready for the next step. The delay isn't a denial, it's an opportunity to grow into the person who can handle what's ahead. You might think you're facing resistance, but in reality, you're being refined. People often assume that blessings come wrapped in ease, but many of God's greatest blessings come wrapped in lessons. That job you didn't get, maybe it would have led you in the wrong direction. That relationship that ended, maybe it wasn't meant to be part of your future. That failure that crushed you, maybe it was the exact thing that needed to happen to push you towards something greater. When you shift your perspective, challenges stop feeling like punishments and start feeling like preparation. You're not being tested to see if you will break. You're being tested to see if you will rise. And every time you do, you step further into the path that was meant for you. When you're on the right path, something remarkable happens. Your choices start aligning with your values. It's not always an instant transformation, but over time, you begin to notice that the decisions you make reflect who you truly are. There's a shift, a clarity that wasn't there before. You stop saying yes to things that drain you and start prioritizing what genuinely matters. You no longer feel torn between what feels right and what others expect of you. You just know. In a world that constantly pressures us to fit in, it's easy to compromise. It's easy to silence your inner voice just to avoid conflict or disappointment. But when God is leading you, that struggle starts to fade. You realize that standing firm in your values isn't about stubbornness, it's about integrity. You start making choices that reflect your faith, your purpose, and your personal truth. It's not about being perfect, it's about being authentic. Sometimes that means walking away from things that once defined you. Maybe it's a job that no longer aligns with your passion, a relationship that holds you back, or a lifestyle that feels empty despite its outward success. The discomfort of change is real, but so is the relief that follows. When you make choices in alignment with your values, you stop feeling like you're living someone else's life. You step into a version of yourself that feels honest, grounded, and purposeful. This alignment isn't just about major life decisions. It's in the small, everyday moments. You start choosing kindness over pride, faith over fear, and truth over convenience. You begin to notice that your words match your actions. You stop making promises you don't intend to keep. You no longer tolerate situations where you have to compromise your beliefs just to keep the peace. And something powerful happens when you live this way. Your inner conflict begins to dissolve. The world around you might not always understand your choices. People may question why you've changed, why you've set boundaries, why you no longer say yes to things that feel wrong in your soul. But deep down, you know that this is what alignment feels like. There's no longer a war between what you do and what you believe. You move with confidence, not because you have everything figured out, but because you trust the path that's unfolding before you. There's a certain peace that comes with knowing you're not chasing approval, you're chasing purpose. And when that happens, fear loses its grip. the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, the fear of making the wrong choice. It all starts to fade. Because when you align with your values, you align with something greater than yourself. You step into the life that was meant for you, not the one you were pressured into. You stop seeking validation from the world and start seeking guidance from within. And that is how you know you are on the right path. Faith is often tested in moments of uncertainty, in seasons where clarity is absent and control feels impossible. When God is leading you on the right path, one of the strongest signs is that your faith deepens. Not because everything makes sense, but because you begin to trust even when you cannot see. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about walking forward despite the unknown, believing that each step is guided with purpose. There is a shift that happens when you realize that control was never yours to begin with. You stop forcing outcomes, stop worrying about every possible scenario, and instead surrender to a plan greater than your own. It doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. It means you move forward with confidence, knowing that whatever is meant for you will never pass you by. When doors close, you stop seeing them as failures and start recognizing them as redirections. When things don't go according to your plans, you trust that they are still going according to His. Trusting God doesn't mean life becomes easier. In fact, sometimes it means you will walk through harder seasons, but with a different perspective. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? There is growth in that shift. You begin to see challenges not as punishment, but as preparation. The struggles refine your character, shaping you into the person you need to become for the blessings ahead. When you're on the right path, faith becomes your foundation. It no longer depends on circumstances or outcomes. You stop looking for proof before you believe. You understand that faith is built in the waiting, in the trusting, in the moments where there is no visible sign, but a deep knowing that you are not alone. This kind of faith does not remove fear, but it gives you the courage to move despite it. There is also a sense of patience that develops. You stop rushing the process, stop trying to force what isn't ready, and start understanding that God's timing is never late. Delays no longer frustrate you the way they used to, because you trust that what is for you will come when it's meant to. You begin to see His hand in the little details, the unexpected conversations, the way things align when you least expect it, the moments where you realize He was preparing you all along. Faith deepens when you realize that even unanswered prayers are a form of protection. Not getting what you wanted when you wanted is often the greatest blessing in disguise. You start to see that some things didn't happen because they weren't meant for you. And instead of being bitter, you are grateful, because in hindsight, you recognize that every closed door was saving you for something better. You also begin to find strength in stillness. You no longer feel the need to constantly do more, prove more, or chase things out of fear of missing out. You trust that where you are right now is exactly where you need to be. You attract relationships that inspire, challenge, and support your journey. This is one of the most profound ways to know that God is leading you on the right path. The people in your life serve as mirrors, reflecting the energy, purpose, and direction of your journey. When you start walking in alignment with what is meant for you, the relationships around you begin to shift. Some people naturally fade away, while others step in at just the right moment, offering wisdom, encouragement, or even lessons that shape your path. There is a reason why certain friendships or connections don't survive every season of your life. Some relationships are meant to be temporary, serving a purpose for a particular time before they move on. That's not failure. It's divine design. When God is guiding you, He removes people who no longer align with where you're going, even if at one point they were an important part of your life. Letting go can be painful, but trust that every exit is making space for something better. Then there are those people who enter your life seemingly out of nowhere. A mentor who speaks wisdom into your life when you need it most. A friend who understands your struggles without explanation. A partner who encourages your growth rather than holding you back. These are not coincidences. They are orchestrations of divine timing. Pay attention to who shows up when you're making big decisions or stepping into a new phase of your life. The right people arrive when you're walking the right path. It's not just about comfort, it's also about challenge. God places people in your life who will push you, question you, and sometimes even disagree with you, not to discourage you, but to refine you. True alignment doesn't mean surrounding yourself with those who only tell you what you want to hear. It means having people who love you enough to hold you accountable, to remind you of your values when you start to drift, and to push you toward the best version of yourself. Pay attention to how people in your life make you feel. Do they drain your energy, or do they leave you feeling uplifted? Do they encourage your dreams, or do they make you second guess your worth? When God is leading you, you'll notice a shift. You'll begin attracting those who pour into your life instead of taking from it. You'll start having deeper, more meaningful conversations, and you'll feel an unspoken sense of peace around certain people. That's not random. That's a sign. Sometimes the biggest proof that you're on the right path is when toxic relationships no longer have a hold on you. The friendships that were built on insecurity, the people who kept you small, the ones who made you feel unworthy, you'll find yourself walking away, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. And in their place, God will send those who remind you of your strength, your purpose, and your divine calling. There are moments in life when we find ourselves avoiding situations without fully understanding why. A sudden change in plans, an unexplained feeling urging us to take a different route, or an instinct telling us to walk away from something that doesn't sit right. These moments aren't random. They are signs of divine protection. God works in ways that often go unnoticed in the moment. You might have applied for a job you desperately wanted only to be rejected, feeling like you lost an opportunity. But months later, you hear that the company shut down or the environment was toxic. What seemed like a loss was actually protection. The relationship you thought was meant to last forever suddenly ended, leaving you heartbroken. But later you realize how much peace you've gained, how that person wasn't aligned with your future. Sometimes what feels like rejection is actually redirection. Have you ever been delayed, stuck in traffic, frustrated because your schedule didn't go as planned? Then you find out there was an accident on the route you originally intended to take. That delay wasn't an inconvenience, it was a safeguard. God sees what we cannot see. He knows the dangers ahead, the battles we are not meant to fight, the burdens we are not meant to carry. And so He steps in, removing what was never meant for us, even when we don't understand why. There's also an unexplainable feeling we get sometimes, a strong sense that something isn't right. You walk into a room and something inside you feels uneasy. You can't explain it, but it's there. That's discernment. That's a divine warning. Too often we dismiss these feelings, convincing ourselves that we are overthinking. But that inner voice, that intuition, is often God's way of speaking to us. When something doesn't feel right, pay attention. And then there are the battles we never even knew existed because we were shielded before they reached us. The person who intended to deceive us, but their true nature was revealed just in time. The opportunity that seemed too good to be true, but fell apart before it could harm us. The countless times we were on the edge of a mistake, but something pulled us back. These are the moments we don't always recognize as divine intervention, yet they are some of the greatest signs of God's guidance. We often look for miracles in grand gestures, but protection is one of the most powerful forms of divine intervention. The doors that didn't open, the plans that fell apart, the relationships that ended, the gut feelings we couldn't ignore, each one is a reminder that we are being led, even when we don't understand the destination. It takes faith to trust that what is being removed is making room for something greater. God is always working, always guiding, always protecting. The question is whether we have the wisdom to recognize it and the trust to follow where He leads. Clarity in small steps is one of the most profound ways God leads us. We often want to see the full picture before we move, but faith doesn't work that way. Instead, God provides just enough light for the next step. It's like walking down a path at night with only a lantern in hand. You may not see the entire road, but as you take one step forward, the next part of the path becomes visible. That is how divine guidance works, step by step, moment by moment, teaching us to trust rather than to control. When God is leading you, you may not always understand where you're going, but you will feel a quiet assurance that you are moving in the right direction. It's not about rushing toward the destination. It's about embracing the journey, even when it feels uncertain. The world teaches us to demand certainty, to have a 5-year plan, to map everything out before taking action. But when you are walking in alignment with God, He asks for trust before understanding. You might find yourself in situations where everything seems unclear, and yet there is a deep sense that you are being guided. You meet the right people at the right time. You receive unexpected encouragement. You stumble upon a resource, an opportunity, or a moment of clarity that feels too perfect to be random. These are not coincidences. They are divine breadcrumbs leading you forward. Often, the challenge is resisting the urge to demand full visibility. Our minds crave security, but God operates through faith. If everything were laid out perfectly, there would be no need for trust. But when you can take a step forward, even when you don't see the whole staircase, you begin to experience what it truly means to be led. This process refines you, it builds resilience, deepens your spiritual awareness, and teaches you to listen to that quiet voice inside that nudges you toward the next right thing. Sometimes the next step isn't a grand revelation, it's a whisper, a small act, a seemingly insignificant choice. Maybe it's a feeling to call someone, to start something new, or to walk away from something that no longer serves you. These small steps, when taken consistently, lead to transformation. What may seem minor in the moment is often a pivotal move in hindsight. When God is leading you in small steps, patience is essential. You might want to rush ahead to have everything figured out at once, but divine timing doesn't work on human schedules. There are seasons of waiting, of slow progress, of trusting even when there's no immediate evidence of results. But every step, no matter how small, prepares you for the next. The key is to remain open, to listen, to move when called, and to trust that even when the full picture isn't visible, you are being led exactly where you need to be. The path may not always be straight, but it is always guided. Inner peace is often misunderstood. People assume it means a life without struggle, without conflict, without pain. But true inner peace isn't found in perfect circumstances. It's found in knowing that despite everything happening around you, you are exactly where you need to be. It's a quiet confidence, an unshakable calm that tells you, this is right, keep going. When God is leading you, peace follows. Not the kind of peace that comes from predictability or control, but the kind that exists even in the unknown. You might not have all the answers, you might not see the full picture, but deep inside, there's a stillness that reassures you. Doesn't mean you won't have doubts or moments of fear. It means that even in those moments, you don't feel lost. You feel held. Think about the times when you've forced something that wasn't meant for you. The job that drained your energy, the relationship that never felt quite right, the decision that left you restless. That's the absence of peace. It's the feeling of constantly fighting against something, of knowing deep down that you're out of alignment, but pushing forward anyway. God's path is different. It doesn't mean there won't be challenges, but it does mean that even in the struggle, there's a sense of rightness, a knowing that this is part of the process. You may have experienced this when making a big life decision. Maybe you were torn between two choices. One seemed safer, more logical, but something about it didn't sit right. The other felt uncertain, maybe even risky, but there was a strange sense of calm when you thought about it. That calm, that's guidance. God doesn't always lead us down the easiest road, but He does place peace in the right one. Peace isn't always loud. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it's just the absence of anxiety, the quiet realization that you're not constantly second guessing yourself. It's in the way you sleep better at night, in the way your mind stops racing. It's in how you no longer feel the need to prove yourself because you're secure in the direction you're going. It's in how your body responds. Less tension, less stress, more ease. People around you might not always understand it. To them, it might seem like you're taking an unnecessary risk or walking away from something good, but inner peace isn't about what makes sense to others. It's about what resonates with your soul. When God is guiding you, the approval of others becomes less important. You stop looking for validation because you already have clarity. And then there's the moment when you realize that no matter what happens, you're okay. Not because everything is perfect, but because you trust. You trust that the same God who brought you this far isn't going to abandon you now. You trust that even in the uncertainty, there's a plan. You trust that peace isn't found in knowing what's next. It's found in knowing who is leading you there. So here you are standing in the middle of uncertainty, wondering if you're moving in the right direction. Maybe the path hasn't been easy. Maybe the road ahead still looks unclear. But if there's peace, real, unshakable peace, then you already have your answer. God doesn't always reveal the full picture, but He does give us markers along the way. And peace is one of the strongest signs that He is leading you. The world may tell you to rely on logic alone, to chase what looks good on the surface, to follow the path of least resistance. But divine guidance doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the right path doesn't make sense to anyone but you and God. And that's okay. Because when God is writing your story, you don't have to explain every chapter. You just have to trust the author. So if your heart is at rest, if your spirit feels settled, if you know deep down that you are where you're meant to be, walk forward with confidence. God's presence isn't just in the big miracles. It's in the stillness, the alignment, the quiet certainty that says, you are not alone. Keep going.